All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Adam Springwater. I'm a Senior Client Relations Manager for the HiSET program. And welcome. If you're just getting started with us, you'll see that I posted my email address at the top of the chat box. I know that Rebecca will be reposting it for me as we get a little further into this for any late joiners. And what we're going to cover is a couple of things. We're going to cover basics about the HiSET itself as we are brought it to Minnesota. It's a program that offers HiSET
All right, he had a little audio issues earlier on, so hopefully he was able to join in just a moment. Looks like he's left it and jumping back in, so we'll just give him a minute to come back.
be sharing my, and now I jumped right back in and did not even launch the deck. So let me just launch the deck again. And can you all see the first slide, the HiSET program?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my video. Maybe it was a bandwidth issue. You should be able to hear me all right. And I'm going to start the slide deck again. If it crashes again, we may have to go to the slide deck without presentation mode. That sometimes is an issue. So here we are. We're back again. I'm going to leave the chat box open. If something goes wrong, please signal me in chat. Can someone let me know? Rebecca, can you hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, perfect. So Rebecca, as long as we have audio, we're going to go. And Rob has my cell. If you need, you can always call. It's on my deck. All right, so we're going to get started. We're a couple minutes behind. So folks, my goal is to not waste your time. So I do a lot of workshops and presentations, and I feel my job is to present you with nuggets, tools of information that are going to make a difference for you and your program right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at two things. We're going to just make sure we all understand what the HiSET program is. I was in the trades before as a teacher. If you're going to build a house, you better build a strong foundation. So although we could assume that everyone knows about the HiSET program, I learn something new every time I look at the program manual. So I'm just going to go through the basics about the HiSET program. And then I'm going to cover what has really been the focus for most people. We'll spend half of this program talking about the transition from ETS to PSI. I know that HiSET has relatively new to the state of Minnesota, which is fantastic. And some of you may know that ETS, Education Testing Service, was the nonprofit that developed the HiSET, and ETS decided 2 years ago to pass it off, and they have chosen to do that, and they have basically sold it to PSI, and we're going to talk a little bit about PSI. So we're going to cover those. Those are the two main areas that I want to cover. And if you have questions, please let Rebecca know. Put them in the chat box, and Rebecca will pause. I'll either pause between slides, or she'll just interrupt me and say, "Hey, Adam, we got a question." And then I'll try to speed up a little bit and give us some extra Q&A time at the end. So let's get started. So one of the things that's important to know, and I have been an educator for almost 30 years now. I'm starting to feel very old, over 4 districts, and many people, call it the GED. And I taught GED programs, but nobody ever earned a GED. You earn an HSE, a high school equivalency, and that's the terminology that we all want to use and help spread the word. So the HiSET is an exam that you take to earn an HSE, or high school equivalency. Nobody earns a GED, nobody earns a HiSET. What you earn is a high school equivalency exam, or equivalent to a diploma in the state of Minnesota. and good anywhere diploma in the state of Minnesota is valued. So the U.S. Department of Education has approved both of these things, and GED and HiSET are both equally are both exams that you can use to earn this HSE. One of the other things you're going to notice about me is I don't read the slides to you. So if there's some data information that I don't cover that you'd like me to go back and cover, please stop me or let Rebecca know and put it in the chat box. Now, the HiSET, as you know, was launched in 2014 and is currently in 30 states, and territories around the country. In fact, technically around the world, because we're in Guam and Samoa as well. But the important thing to know is that we continue to add states. We've had 4 since 2020, and the HiSET continues to grow and become accepted at the state level. It's important to know that students earn a Minnesota HSE, because you'll get students who will say things like, well, I'm moving to a state that doesn't offer the HiSET. Will that state recognize my HiSET credential? And you say, well, you didn't earn a HiSET. You earned a Minnesota State Department of Education high school equivalency. It's as good as any diploma you can get from the state of Minnesota. If someone asks if you have a high school credential, the answer is yes. Next question. So, and I always like to be very clear. There's a lot of good reasons to use either the GED or HiSET. And my opinion is that you'll know what's best for your students. Now, I happen to feel very strongly that the HiSET offers some powerful advantages. And one of them is that it's the least expensive testing option. Price is never the best way to make any decision, but it is an important one. You know, if you're doing grant funding for limited or restricted funded programs, which is every adult ed program that I've ever worked with, you need to make the most bang for your buck. An important feature that the HiSET has is that it's both computer-based and paper-based option. Now, quite frankly, in my opinion, and I could certainly talk about why computer-based testing gives the student, all things being equal, provides a better option for the student. You get an instant score. It sequences the questions one at a time so that students aren't panicking and skipping questions or looking ahead. But regardless of that, what I have found is that there's a tremendous amount of anxiety at test time. For those of us that have taught early childhood ed, we know about the affective filter. And for the rest of us, you know that stress causes you to make poor decisions. That's why when your kids are fighting in the back seat, you pull into your neighbor's driveway, even though you know where you live. So one of the stresses that adult ed students face is some students are computer phobic. Some students, ironically, are paper phobic. I had a student who was very concerned about her handwriting. And in her choice, paper-based testing was not a good choice for that reason. But all things being equal, computer-based testing offers great advantages. But a better advantage is to be able to have the choice so that students know that they feel empowered. We also offer remote testing, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But for me, it's actually psychometrics, it's testing development. Those of us, if you've ever had a background in doing test development, I did a little bit of work of that about 20 years ago. One of the important things is that when students are navigating a test, we want to make them as comfortable as possible. And although the HiSET has between 50 and 61 questions on 5 different subtests, all but the essay are all this familiar multiple choice single response question format. So the student does not have to have any anxiety about is it going to be drag or drop or ordering pairs. It's a simple question, multiple response format. And it does allow students to relax on that level. It's available in English and Spanish, and we're going to talk about accommodated testing for those with disabilities in just a few minutes here. So let's just get to the ground floor. There are 5 subtests that make up the HiSET. Reading, writing, mathematics, science, and social studies. There are between 50 and 61 questions on these subtests. The writing subtest has 2 portions, a multiple choice and an essay. Now, there's 2 parts to this. Both of them are challenging. Mark Twain famously said once, he said a lot of things famously, but one of my favorites is, if you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the big one first. So most people struggle. There's a lot of anxiety over the essay portion of the written subtest. So I've always encouraged students and test centers, get them to write the essay first and then move sequentially. That's the big frog, and then work through the multiple choice ones. But one of the key things about the written subtest is if you do not write an essay, you will not pass. So it's a pretty big frog. As I said before, it's available in computer-based and paper-based testing. Some of you might be aware of a virus called COVID that has interrupted lifestyles about 2 years ago. I think all of us are. And one of the things that COVID did was shut down testing, in-person testing. And so remote proctor-based testing has been launched and is a very robust platform. And it will continue to be offered because it's my estimation, and it varies from site to site, but between 10 and 15% of students either cannot or will not go to a test center to test. And so we need to continue to have an option for them. But it is also my opinion, my very strong opinion, that the best place for students to test is at a test center because they will get better support than they would at home or in some remote location. And they're usually in proximity to an adult education program, so they're the kind of support they need. It's also important to know what is good and what is good enough on the test. The HiSET has, as I said, 5 subtests between 50 and 61 questions. We're gonna do a little mathematics proportion problem this morning, folks, but don't worry, I'll give you all the answers. So the scale to a 20-point scale, that's a proportion problem. So 50 to 61 questions scaled on a 20-point scale, and need a minimum of at least 8 out of 20 or roughly 40% to pass the subtest. Now there's a couple of caveats and they're very important. The first one is that your total battery, that's all 5 subtests together, you have to have a battery score of at least 45 points. So if you do some quick mental math, 5 subtests, you can pass an individual subtest with 8, but 8 times 5 is 40. That's right. So you've got to do better than the minimum on at least one, if not all, of the subtests. The other thing to pay attention to is, as we've mentioned, the writing subtest has 2 portions, the multiple choice and the essay. You got to write the essay. It doesn't matter what your score is. Without an essay, you're not passing. But on top of it, at least 2 of those 8 points have to come from the essay. Now, I've been explaining this for many years now. If you have a better explanation, I'm serious, please email it to me. But here's the best I've come up with. There's 20 points. You can get 6 of them from the essay and 14 from the multiple choice. You have to have a total of 8, and 2 of them have to come from the essay. Now, one of the things that I reach for in programs and I encourage, Vince Lombardi famously said, perfection is not possible, but if you strive for perfection, you're more likely to reach excellence. So I try to strive for the highest score possible for my students, and the career and college readiness score, which is 15 or roughly 75% above on that scale, 20-point scale, or with a minimum of 4 on the essay. If you have the CCR readiness score, it allows students to take credit-bearing courses at 2-year and 4-year institutions, and it allows them to skip those survey or non-credit-bearing courses, and it's a great target to aim for. The military accepts it as well. So before we move on, Rebecca, are there any questions? We're going to jump into the PSI transition portion of this workshop, which is probably the most important new information. But any questions at this point about the HiSET itself, the test, the 5 subtests, scoring?
Nothing's come through the chat box yet.
Okay, great. So now we come to the big issue, or the big news. So many of you know that we are transitioning from ETS to PSI. ETS was a great company, still is a great company, but ETS is primarily a research-based research education company and nonprofit, actually. And ETS was interested in developing the HiSET, but was not as interested in maintaining it and supporting it. And PSI is a company that currently offers, they have over 1,400 test center networks in 85 countries around the world. And PSI offers certifications for boards and different associations. The FAA does certifications for big companies like Microsoft and Amazon. So PSI was very interested. None of the certifications that PSI offers can be taken if you do not have a high school diploma or a credential. So the HiSET is a gateway to the rest of the programs and certifications that PSI offers. Now, one of the things, and I know that you guys already do this, because in adult education, the HSE it's a doorway, not a window. We want our students to pass through it, and get to a place where they have other career opportunities. I mean, we owe a funding change fundamentally how we structure our programs, and adult ed programs across the country really became sort of social service workforce readiness programs where we really work on the whole student, trying to, as you know, the best programs focus on what are the student's goals, what are the steps to achieve that goals, and then to break those steps down into manageable bites. That's Benjamin Bloom's Principles of Mastery Learning. And usually the first step is how to get that high school diploma. So what I like about joining PSI is that they now, I used to encourage students, and I've seen a lot of programs do this, encourage students to think about their career goals. And so when you registered for the HiSET previously at ETS, once you were completed and had graduated, that ETS login, that username and password, it kind of became like clothes that you outgrew. You might have referred to it, or a student might have referred to it once or twice after completion to get some scores, but really once they were off and running, it wasn't something that's useful to them. But the PSI login that they're going to use also gives them access to these other certifications, and it just puts the idea in their head. So there's a wide range of state licensing exams that a student could choose. And you might be interested in being an architect, and I'm certainly going to help you steer you down that path, or a phlebotomist, or a contractor, or insurance agent, court reporters. But what I call this points on the horizon. It's great to open our students' eyes to those points on the horizon while they're on the path that they're on. And as someone who's gone through a few career changes in my life, it was just good to be aware that there were options out there. And so the PSI family of exams allows that to happen. You could look up, you could go by state, you can log on. If you look at Minnesota, there's a huge pull-down menu of just as they're scrolling down past the HiSET to get to the HiSET, your students will see these other certifications listed. It's a great way to open their eyes to what are the potentials for their careers. So there's a couple of things that are going to happen. This change is where I'm going to give you a timeline. This change is actually in the works, and September is going to be a critical month for transitioning. And I taught middle school for a long time. I've also done a lot of work with at-risk youth and adults in correction centers. And I used to call it, I said, I'm not going to malarkey around with you. I would say, well, Adam, or Mr. Springwater, what's malarkey? I said, oh, you know what malarkey is, and I'm not going to use that word in class because I don't cuss in class. So I'm not going to malarkey with you guys either. No one is going to like what it takes to do the change, including me, because when I do these trainings in public, I have everyone grimace at this one. So at everyone in privacy or wherever it is you're joining this webinar, I want you to make your worst grimace face. Go ahead, like you just stepped in doggy business on your way to a wedding, or you locked your keys inside the car. Whatever it is that makes you really grimace. Someone served you decaf coffee first thing in the morning. Whatever it is that makes you grimace, I want you to give it right now. All right, here we go. Everyone is going to have to get a new username and password, including me. So when we're moving from ETS to PSI, we're going to have to all have new usernames and passwords. So this is something that is going to be happening over the next month, and I'll give you a timeline for it, and it's going to be challenging. There's no way about it. We're going to be doing a data migration of well over 100,000 test takers from one system to the other. If you've ever done data migration, you know that it's going to go well, but there's going to be there have to be bumps in the road. It's kind of like if you ever bought a new computer or a new phone and they tell you it's just going to plug in and run, well, it just never usually does that, does it? But we work the kinks out, and PSI is committed to working those kinks out. So and for the login portals, how students and how test administrators access the HiSET is going to have a new URL. So those are the things that we're going to grimace about. But here's the good news, and this I think is the critical thing. The test itself is staying exactly the same. So the delivery and formats, accommodations, resources, state fees, all of those are staying the same. And the way that I like to think about this is, I'm sure all of you can drive or have been in cars, but if you ever borrowed a car or rented a car, you know that before you pull out of the driveway, it's a good idea to adjust the mirrors and check to see where the controls are so that you're not running the windshield wipers when you're trying to signal that left turn. So the PSI dashboard is going to contain all of the elements that the ETS dashboard has, but yes, they're going to be in slightly different places, so it's going to take a little adjusting. Now, towards that end, there's going to be training for state staff, adult educators, and test center staff, and there's There's an email campaign that's already started. It's also going to go out to the test takers themselves. Another piece of great news is that the website's going to be updated, but so are the resources. There'll be new practice tests that are being developed and will be issued in 2023. Now, towards that end, we've done a huge outreach campaign in social media and other places. We're going to take a closer look at what that transition means, and then we'll pause for some questions. So we're trying to keep things easy. One of the things, now this is a part of the webinar that I really have been enjoying as I meet with different people around the country about this transition. So one of the things, so some of you may have been referring to it as the ETS HiSET. Most people call it the HiSET. PSI is elected to keep it simple, and from now on, it's just going to be known as the HiSET. There'll be no branding prioritization of that. So currently you log into hiset.ets.org. You're going to continue, now you'll just log into hiset.org. And for a while, if you log into the old domain, it'll automatically forward you. So the name will stay the same, the test itself will stay the same. We're going to provide new branding guides and assets, but really it's really mostly just the editing out of that little word ETS. The community engagement I've already mentioned. In Test Taker, there's an email campaign that's be going out directly to test takers who currently have HiSET ID. So those usernames and passwords are all associated with email addresses, and there'll be a campaign to reach out to them. Now, here's probably one of the most critical slides, the transition timeline. So I put in red the date that I still do tutoring, I still work with adult ed programs local in my area, but as an educator, as a test administrator or an educator, there's going to be a transition time when there'll be no testing. So the key dates for you to know about now at this stage, on this date, is that September 23rd is the final day of testing for testing on the ETS system. So you'll have to schedule that test. The last day for testing on the ETS system is on the 22nd. Last day of ETS testing will be the 23rd. And then from the 24th to the 2nd, there won't be any HiSET testing. However, students can continue. Now, every student who has a ETS HiSET ID will have gotten a link. And in fact, all of you that are test administrators and chief examiners should already have also gotten that email with a link to set up your new PSI ID. So those will continue to happen. Now, before you flood the chat box, Rebecca, if you could please repost my email, just cut and paste it and stick it in there for me right now. If you are a chief examiner or a test administrator and you did not get an email from PSI, email me and I'll forward you the form letter that lets you do that. You might also want to check your spam or your junk files. We found them a lot there. But the first day of testing on the PSI system is going to be October 3rd. Now, again, no malarkey. We're transferring over 100,000 students, bytes of data. All the data is transferring. The ETS ID numbers are staying the same. They will need new usernames and passwords. Remember that grimace we did a couple of minutes ago? That hasn't changed. And as you guys well know, that when you do a migration of this magnitude, there's going to be issues. So October 3rd is going to be a fascinating day for all of us. October 4th will be less interesting. By the end of that week, we'll be off and running and things will be good. So this is the key thing. One of the things that has come up, with the local adult schools that I work with, and when people ask me, is that if you have a student who's halfway through the 5 subtests on the ETS system, it's probably a good idea to try to schedule to get them done by September 23rd, if possible. If not, then they'll have to create a new PSI ID and they can continue their testing. So if they've already taken 2 out of the 5 subtests, those scores will transfer onto the PSI system. And it's a little bit of an adaptation for those students that have to have it. That's great. But if you can get a student ready before to take all their tests by the 23rd, and it is, remember, you never want someone to test before they're ready. But if it is a little gray line, you might err on the side of caution in that one. Now, there is going to be outreach at 4 main levels. There's a 5th one that's not on here, but test center staff will get training, adult ed program staff. Corrections and restricted facilities are getting separate trainings because I have worked in the gated communities of our country and they have special needs. Those of you that work in corrections know what I mean. State staff have already had their trainings, and there's going to be special outreach directly to the test takers themselves. The test taker bulletin is being updated, as is the program manual. Again, I want to lower your anxiety, your affective filter. The test is saying exactly the same. And although the URLs, the way in which you log on to it, and yes, for those of you that are test administrators, your IT staff is probably going to have to help you navigate downloading the PSI software into your computers. It's not going to be any more challenging than the ETS software download. In fact, you're going to have better support, so that'll be good. But as far as the actual test packets, the delivery of the testing, and the test itself, they remain exactly the same. We're going to get to some more great news now that will hopefully encourage you, and we'll wrap up and take some questions. So, contact center support. So test takers, if you look at these time frames, you'll notice that the contact support is the hours are much broader than they used to be at ETS. PSI has a much more robust phone contact hours for test takers. And I always encourage people to email. If students email the HiSET email, the return around time is 24 hours, which is phenomenal. So it's good to, as students log in, now this is an old site, I actually think that it has become active, but in order for students to accurately email and get a response, they need to create their PSI accounts. So they'll be getting those emails from PSI to create their accounts, and then they can submit what we call Zendesk tickets that have a 24-hour turnaround time. But another great piece of news, yay, is that the 1-800 or the 855-MY-HiSET number that students use is staying the same. So great communication, seamless communication for students moving from ETS to PSI, 24-hour turnaround time on emails. It gets better. I was the special ed coordinator for the last district I worked in. I've done a lot of special ed accommodations requests. My opinion is that we're all special needs. We just don't all have IEPs. Those of you that have worked in special ed know exactly what I mean. And when ETS, the turnaround time, if you remember, was 4 to 6 weeks. Well, that could be very frustrating, especially if scheduling, you bumped into scheduling. So the turnaround time for responses to accommodation requests at PSI is 2 business days. That's right, 2 business days. Yay. That's a great turnaround time. And you'll get a response. It'll either be an approved, and if it's not approved, you'll be submitted with instructions on how to provide the supplementary documentation. So PSI has been working on this for well over a year. And about 8 months ago, when this came across, some of us lobbied very heavily for a more proactive response. But when I found out what PSI's standard accommodations policy was, this was great news, because it's just, you don't have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to find out. It's just really great news. And it gets even better because, so we'll get to it in just a second. They have a 24/7, 365 staff, but we'll get to that in a second. If you're an existing test center, you're just going to be contacted. Like I said before, email me if you didn't get the letter from PSI, but make sure you get into the system. Most often, the reason why people didn't get the email is because it went to spam, and the spam or junk, the filter got it out. The other reason that's less common but does happen is if the chief examiner or test administrator changed at a site but nobody updated the staff form. That's happened too. So we'll take care of you there. If you're interested in becoming a test center, you can email me with your request, and we'll work with the state director to help set up. That process is going to stay the same. There's a couple of different supports now. Many of you who are chief examiners and test administrators have worked with TAS, Test Administration Services. At PSI, it's called Channel. So we're going to have to learn it. Like I said, a couple of little growing pains here. But there's Channel and Site Management, Test Center Help Desk, Test Session Management, and Test Center Recruitment and Onboarding. The Test Session Management is of great importance, great exciting to test administrators, because you're actually going to have a number you can call where it'll be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's better hours than Costco, folks. This is the great thing. You can also have questions for policy or test center help desk. That's for your tech support, anytime tech support is needed. And again, this contact information is all provided. It's really siteadmin at psionline.com. You can, that's the basic gateway, and then you'll be channeled and you have a team respond. It's just great to know 24/7, 365. It just doesn't get better than that. That's for tech support. Administration channel support is what we call tasks. Many of you know that TAS had a particular task group that was assigned to Minnesota, so you get the same person. TAS actually had 15 people working for it, and you just dealt with the point person. Channel does the same thing. Channel has regional management, so you will deal with your calls and your queries will always be dealt to the same region, diverted to the same regional team, so that you'll have a regional person who's experienced with your site, with your state, and the specific needs. And again, available 24/7, 365. Test session will help you during tests. You know, a lot of my testing times were after regular business hours, because go figure, my students had jobs, so we were trying to schedule for their benefit. So again, that test session management will match your testing schedule. If you offer paper-based testing, you're going to continue to offer it. You will continue to use the HiSET materials that you have through the end of the year. Now, when you get that PSI email and you register yourself in the PSI system, you'll also be able to schedule your testing past October 2nd. But for paper-based testing, you will then start getting your emails with the prepaid shipping envelopes. You still don't have to pay for shipping, except you won't be shipping them to ETS, you'll be shipping them to PSI. You'll use your current materials. If you need new materials, they'll be sent to you. You'll use them through the end of this calendar year. In December, new materials for 2023 will be sent to you, just like they always have been. And then after the close of the calendar year and testing is concluded, you'll return the unused materials in these shipping labels. So it's pretty much straightforward. The online proctored exams, for this group, it doesn't really affect you, but it's good to know that HiSET currently uses a third-party vendor called ProctorU. PSI has its own in-house online proctoring, so the responsiveness will be much better and much more seamless. Quite frankly, my strong opinion is that the test taker is best supported at a test center associated with adult education program. But as we mentioned earlier, some students simply cannot or will not make it to a test center, so they'll continue to be supported with online proctoring. And again, online proctoring is supported 24/7, 365. I love being able to say that. It just doesn't get better than that. So that's the presentation that I have. It looks like we have, to my clock, about 9 full minutes for Q&A. So I am going to go back on my video. And let's see, you can see my face. I'm going to look at chat.
Yeah, there is a question for you in chat.
All right, so Jean needs to pay attention. She switched to HiSET. Yeah, so Jean, great question. Jean, I'm going to give the answer that HiSET may or may not want me to give. I don't know if your option is to continue with GED or not, but you may not have that option. The reality is that although HiSET and GED are both HSE exams, no state, in fact, the federal government, has arranged for an equivalency between the two. So you can't use the written subtest of, let's say, the HiSET to qualify for an unfinished GED portion. And actually in GED, they roll reading and writing together, which was another thing I really never liked about that testing. Instructionally, in fact, tomorrow we're going to do a writing workshop for this group. And I can really tell you how reading comprehension skills are critical to understanding all the elements of the test, but they should be assessed separately. They're not on GED and they are on the HiSET. So the simple answer to your question is no, they cannot use HiSET subtests to complete GED portions. Neither can they use GED portions to complete HiSET. That's the simple answer. PSI testing centers in St. Paul, Rochester, Duluth. So let's be very clear. PSI has over, I think it's over 1,400 test centers around the world. But just because it's a PSI testing center does not mean it's going, yes, the answer is yes, you can take the full battery of HiSET, absolutely. But to get to the test center question, if it's a PSI testing center, it's not going to automatically start offering the HiSET at the end of September. Current approved adult ed HiSET programs will be all transferred from ETS to PSI. If a PSI testing center wanted to start offering the HiSET, they would still have to apply and get state approval from the state director, Brad, and his team here in Minnesota. Good question. Other questions? Did I go too fast? The students will be able to, so the question is, where will students be able to take the HiSET? Students will be able to take the HiSET at all the testing centers that currently offer it. And if you want, you could Google HiSET. You can just go HiSET testing Minnesota. It will take you to the website right now. And PSI site will launch. Is it possible to be approved for testing center, paper, and pencil? Yes, absolutely. You could be approved for paper or computer-based or both. There are some correctional facilities that don't have computer-based testing available, so they sometimes will just go for paper-based testing. There are some testing centers that don't want to offer paper-based testing, so they'll just go for computer-based testing. My opinion, and my opinion is like, 50 cents, it'll get you half a cup of coffee, but it's really up to you to decide what's in your best interest. But my opinion, when test centers ask for it, is I would get qualified for both. You don't have to schedule it. You can just have it as a tool in your drawer. Some accommodations will require paper-based testing, and the Individuals with Disabilities Act does require that if we have an approved accommodation, we have to provide resources for it. So it's better to have that approval in place for when you need it, but that's really your choice.
Adam?
Yeah.
Can I ask us, there are several questions in here, and I don't mean to put Brad or Brandy on the spot, but some clarification around paper pencil testing, because it seems like there's a little bit of confusion or some disagreement as far as, will there be a policy that will come down from our MDE team about paper pencil?
That's a great question, Christine. And so I'd like to have Brandy come on and talk a little bit about that.
Awesome. Hi, Brandy.
Hey here. Can you see me okay?
The A team. I love it. You guys are all here.
The A team.
6 minutes, Brandy, to answer this question.
Yes, wonderful. Nice to meet everyone. So we are working on a paper policy for our HiSET. We are wanting to make it as equal and opportunistic as our GED paper policy as well. So there has not been anything set in stone of what our requirements from Department of Education have determined. I can tell you that HiSET itself, the paper policy, is a little bit more lenient, and that you are able to keep the paper test forms on site, is from my understanding. So once we come up with a requirement in the process as a team, and we get that acknowledged and down, then the ability to have your paper testing at your site will be available. I do know that much. When it comes to, I saw there was a question about the cost to take the test. So each individual test, from my understanding, Adam, chime in on me because the numbers escape my mind right now.
So there's a base cost for ETS, and there's a state cost. The best thing for people to do is you can simply Google HiSET state requirements Minnesota, and it'll answer all of these FOQs, because sometimes there's test center charge. And I would just be looking it up right now, and I don't like to waste people's time. So just Google HiSET state requirements Minnesota, and you will come to an FAQ page that will answer a lot of your questions. Those policies are not going to change with PSI from ETS.
Correct. And so, to let everyone know, since we are in the middle of implementing the HiSET, a lot of these processes haven't been confirmed in stone. So we're meeting with the HiSET team to get our state requirements down, and that is on the books for our calendar. So we as a team have already had conversations of what we're wanting our requirements. I can tell you a lot of the states mirror the standards of what HiSET puts out there for requirements. age affiliation of when they're able to take the test. So there's certain things that may change from state to state, like in Georgia, where I come from, it's 16 to test is available. But here we have a little bit older. So it wouldn't be too much of a drastic change, but a lot of the states do go with the required recommended requirements that HiSET puts out there. For these vouchers that are going out, the vouchers are free. They've already been covered. They've been purchased by Atlas. So I have a lot of people saying, oh, there's a $2 charge. That is if you go to HiSET and you try to purchase these vouchers on your own. If you are emailing me directly or you're emailing your consortium manager, we have over 3,000 vouchers purchased. So there is a form for individuals to sign up on, and you become a designated person for either your site that you are directly at, or even possibly your program. And then you can allocate those vouchers to individuals that want to take a practice test or an OPT, and then get a little bit more insight of what these questions look like, how they're formatted, even looking at the digital ability of what the page looks like and compare it to the GED. And our goal is to give options to our testers. We are not trying to promote one over the other. We want to give high school equivalency opportunities to everyone. And so that is the direction that we're going with it. So I know that some people have that question on cost.
Right. And Brandy, if I could just tag team on the back here, I really applaud what the policy that you're trying to do. Just everyone real briefly, I see some questions. Lorna, I'll answer your question as soon as Brandy has wrapped up this. I see Scott probably has a question for you, Brandy. But the paper-based testing, the materials are kept on site in a secure location. The only thing that changes is you mail the answer keys back and forth, and there's no cost. HiSET pays the shipping backwards and forwards. Brandy's absolutely right. It's a great option. It's a great option for, especially if you're running correctional facilities or group homes, youth offending programs, battered wives. There's a lot of great programs where the privacy of the student is critical, and we want to keep them, out of that public eye. So you control the paper-based materials. There's a lot of good reasons to use computer-based testing. There's a lot of paper-based testing. I really applaud the choice. Scott,
now, I do want to chime in that we are a computer-based testing state. We do have 2 prisons that are going to be in the pilot for our testing centers is the goal. And one of them is going to be more computer-based and one's going to be more paper-based because of their accessibility issues. So we're going to get a lot of rich information of how this works between October to December. So that way, when we start to open up more testing centers at the beginning of the new year, we're going to have the ability of knowing what works best practices and policies, and just recommendations for new sites. So again, if you remember, we have 10 to 12 sites that have signed up to become a pilot test center. So we can really start to understand this process and what works best for our students and our instructors and facilities as well. So I just want to reiterate, we have yet to decide exactly what that paper policy is. But like Adam was saying, it's a very easy process. And so once we determine the eligibility portion of that, then it's going to be easy to have those on site, send them out. It does take about 10 business days, if I remember correctly.
I can chime in, if once you mail it, once it arrives at the processing center, the paper-based, the multiple choice questions are scored and scores are posted within 3 business days.
Correct.
And the S, because they're scored by people, so is the computer-based post within 5 business days. The kerfluffle comes as people don't always account for mail time. Like if you drop it in the mail on a Friday afternoon, it's not going to get to the testing processing center till Monday, and then that's when it arrives that the timing starts. And Brandy, I have a lot of experience in corrections, so I'm really excited to work with you. If I can be of any support there. A lot of correctional facilities are allowing computer-based testing now. The fire
Most definitely, absolutely. But everyone needs to know that the writing portion is scored by a human, even if it's computer-based. 2 humans.
2 humans.
Even if it's computer-based or written. So that's a luxury to really have individuals taking a look at the writing portion and seeing the skills of our students. I know, Scott, I see your hand up. If you want to chime in.
So in the sending out of the OPTs, the official practice tests, one of the pieces that I got and a couple other folks got was like an invoice. So were we being charged for the official practice tests, or were those being free?
No, so if you have, when I sent out email communication to the consortium manager saying, do you want option 1? Do you want to be the designated person to handle all of your vouchers for all of your sites? Or option 2, do you want to designate one individual at different sites to allocate those vouchers? The person was then to sign up on a Google form, and I send that information to Essential Education. And Essential Education contacts that designated person with an account that they create for you. And it also has a tutorial on how to access your account. And then once you open your account, your vouchers are automatically populated. So there is no going and signing up for them.
I also got an invoice for something regarding money, as did somebody else in the consortium. So that was a confusing part.
Okay, so I'll reach out to Rich because there is no charge. There is
Got it. Thank you.
absolutely no charge. We've already paid that big bill. Atlas paid that big bill for us, so we don't have to worry about it.
I'm really good at ignoring bills, so no worries.
Well, sounds good, but thank you for asking that question because I don't see that email that comes to you because that's a personal email through your account. So it's nice to know what's going out there. Thank you. Are there any other specific questions about these OPTs and about our deep dives with Christine and all the information that we're collecting? We've all been in the classroom, the majority of us, and I'm just going to put it out there. It takes our instructors to be behind us and on board to implement anything like this, because you are the ones on the front line explaining to your instructors or your students their best options, as well as what you feel works best for them and giving them that information. And so we really want to make sure that all of our instructors have an opportunity to access this information and determine what it looks like, because we all want to know what we're giving our students as in their options. I don't see any other hands.
Hey, everybody, remember to go to the land meeting here at 3:15. It's in your Sched app. And if any of you are still wanting any bingo cards, you can email me at Andy_Albee@ardale.org. Adam, you can come play bingo with us tonight if you want to.
I'd love to do that. Listen, I'm getting some questions about the written. So let me chime in rather than texting back and forth about that, Andy. I'll play bingo with you guys. The written subtest is 120 minutes for both portions. They're not timed. You can take as much time with one portion or the other. My strategy, this comes, I was a reading specialist, is write the essay first. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing a writing workshop. I'm going to show you how you can prepare your students to write a passing essay the first time and every time. I know that's a big claim to make. And it'll take them about 15 minutes to write that essay. And they can use the remaining 105 minutes to answer the 60 multiple choice questions, which, interestingly enough, psychologically, people are more afraid of the essay, but it's the multiple choice that is, in my opinion, is actually the more difficult part of the test. It's just a whole question of perception and anxiety. So a lot of questions about the written subtest, and that and the math subtest are the two most hotly contested, well, most intimidating portions of any HSE exam. So happy to answer those questions.
And of course, you can always reach out to me at MDE if you have specific questions, or if you need to find out where to find this information, please reach out to me. I would love to be able to help you and walk you through it. I'm working with the HiSET team, Adam and Tanya, every day, as well as Essential Ed, and making sure that we make this as easy for everyone as possible.
Yeah, we're as a team, and I think I can speak for everyone on the team, and Brandon, I think you and Brad have discovered this, is we're really committed to your students and your student experience first and foremost. And we happen to wear the HiSET badge, or wear the Minnesota badge, or wear the Central Ed badge. But, you know, quite frankly, folks, I know you're committed to this, because if you're not, you're being underpaid and overworked for no good reason. We're all committed to the student experience here, and it's a very wonderful group to be in. And keep the questions coming. I'm going to post my email address one more time. I apologize for the technological problems earlier, but that's what we've learned to adapt to. If there's no other questions, we'll close. I'm just going to take a few minutes to get quiet and post my name here. Last chance to ask any questions. All right, well, don't forget bingo. And really appreciate your time today. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your time.